Hello, today we're going to have a look at the Cessna 172 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're going to have a play with radio navigation and just do some flying around. We'll have a look at ILS as well. So let's have a look at where we are in the world. I'm running Little Nav Map. I'm not going to get into how Little Nav Map works today. You can see we're in New Zealand. So if we zoom in, there's a very good reason I've chosen this place to do this flight. We're parked at Wellington on the ground. If you can zoom right into Wellington, you can see we're in the parking area off the main runway. So we'll start the plane up in a minute and taxi round and take off. If we zoom out though, you can see that at Wellington we have a VOR station right next to the airport, and across the water at Woodbourne we have another VOR station next to a military airport. But for our purposes this is wonderful because the VOR stations are right on top of the airports, so we can talk just in terms of flying directly towards a point on the map, and we can do it without using GPS. Okay, so if we go back into the airplane and get inside, we're going to cheat and press Control E to start up. I could very easily, you can see the switches going on down here. All they've really done is turn the batteries on, pushed the mixture forwards and turn the key on and turn the displays on. That's really all it's done. I wonder if it'll turn the autopilot on for us as well. So there's the autopilot. Is it going to turn this on down here as well? The transponder? I don't think it's going to. Anyway. So we are not going to use the GPS, we are just going to use the nav radios. Okay, so we are going to tune numbers in over here. So just to explain what instruments relate to what, we are going to use these knobs here to change frequencies, yeah? You can see we can push between COM radios and nav radios. So if we do that, we see that happen, yep. So then we can choose a frequency in decimal, or sorry, integers and decimals, and then we can make it active. So each radio shows two numbers. There's two radio stacks here. This is the top one, which relates to this radio, or this instrument I should say, and you have a frequency that you're tuning in and an active frequency. So when you are changing the frequency, you're changing the one at the bottom, and you press the button to switch it to be the active one, which does mean you can have two frequencies ready at any one time. But beyond that, you've actually got two radios as well. So you've also got, again, this works exactly the same way. We can push between using the COM radio and the nav radio, and you can change the integers and the decimals, and you can flick the frequencies to make the one you've just tuned in the active one, and the one that was active becomes the one you're tuning. So again, so essentially you can have four frequencies on the go at once. The reason you might do that is to have a frequency you are monitoring and another frequency that you're actually using. So you'll see there's some buttons up here. I don't know if you've ever taken any notice of these in the various aeroplanes. So in the Cessna, this panel looks like this. This is essentially saying what's going to come out of your headset or speakers on your computer. So at the moment I'm hearing COM1 and the markers, the radio markers when I'm on approach, for example. If I turn COM2 on as well, then I will also hear this radio simultaneously to this one for the COM radio, for example, or the markers if I've got the nav switched on as well. So when I get near a nav radio station, I'll start to hear the Morse code associated with it. So if you imagine, if you go and look at these, it's easier to see this on ILS actually. Can we see it here? It doesn't show us on the map, but if we right click on Wellington, show information for Wellington, and let's have a look. Does it give us the ILS frequencies, or sorry, the Morse code for them? No, it's not going to, is it? Runways. Oh, there you go. So yeah, Morse for runway 34. So if we're tuned in to the correct frequency for the ILS, you'll start to hear dot dot dash dash dot dash dash dot. So, and you'll probably get the same thing for the VORs if we show information for the VOR DME at Wellington. Yes, there you go, the Morse code. So when you tune your radio in, you should be able to hear it. Yeah, if you in the cockpit, if you turn on hearing the codes for the VOR for the navigation radios. So let's have. We've started the aeroplane, let's go and take off, and then we can start tuning the radio and have a play around. I've chosen the 172 on purpose because it has an autopilot. So we can set the plane flying in a straight line, and then we can have a play with the radios. So we're going to come off the... I'm just going to go and change the volume level so you can actually hear the aeroplane. Did I come off the parking brake? I have now. Okay, so you can press space in Flight Simulator to sit up in the seat. They used to be up and down arrow keys on the keyboard would move you up and down, but that caused problems with some of the airplane models. So in one of the Microsoft Flight Simulator updates, they changed that to use the space bar to toggle you to a normal position and a high position. So we're just going to taxi around. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see a bit more where we're going. So there's the fueling station, which we're not going to. Just want to go to the runway. We've not got ATC switched on, so we don't need to really worry. And there's no traffic around, as far as I'm aware. Beautiful clear day in New Zealand. A few little wispy bits of cloud in the distance. Okay, full throttle. Knots, 60 knots, 70 knots, and I'm going to rotate, and we're up. So I'm just going to trim the plane to gently climb on its own while I sort the autopilot out. Okay. So on the autopilot we want to use heading mode, but we need to set the heading bug first to the direction we're actually going. So we're going to roll this knob here and you'll see the red marker moving on the compass. We're also going to set the altitude we want to be climbing towards, so we'll say 2,000 feet should be fine. So let's turn the autopilot on, and you'll notice when you turn the autopilot on it's in roll and vertical speed mode, so it's matching what I was doing basically. So then we go heading mode. We can say we want to go to 2,000 feet and we want to get there, or we have to press altitude mode again to get vertical speed, and then say get there at 500 feet a minute, just by pressing the up and down to modify your vertical speed. Okay, so we're going for 2,000 feet in VS mode at 500 feet a minute, and you can see on the vertical speed it has now done that. So I'm going to pull the throttle back a bit because we don't need to be going quite that fast. Okay, so we're now flying along in a nice straight line towards those hills over there. So let's have a look at the map. So we'll do a right turn and come back down this side, and then once we're in the bay we can start playing with the radio. So instead of flying or turning it ourselves, we'll do the right turn just by moving the heading bug. So we'll spin this round, and as we spin it you will see the plane will start chasing it. So we can just keep going. I'll go a bit faster so I get there quickly until I get to 180 degrees. Okay, so the plane is now doing a nice steady turn to 180 degrees. We can look out and see the scenery. Because it's on autopilot, it's still climbing 500 feet a minute until it gets to 2,000 feet. So we're halfway there, we're at 1,000 feet already. So there's Wellington. We're going to pass back over the runway because we obviously 180 somewhere this way. Okay, so let's have a play immediately with the nav radios. So if we go and look, and you can't quite see this on this map, it's 112.30. If we right click on little nav map and show information for the VOR DME at Wellington, you can see it here, frequency 112.30. So if I go into my nav1 radio and I change the frequency, so notice the highlight is on the second part, which is the nav radio part, and we want 112.30. So integer 112, decimal 30, and then switch it to active, and you'll see the nav radio has come to life. Oh, we're going a bit too slowly. Opening the engine up. So the autopilot is doing its best and it's fishtailing around, trying to maintain 500 feet a minute regardless of our throttle setting. So we're slowly accelerating. So what we can do to combat that is just reduce the rate of climb to 100 feet a minute, and now you can see the speed increasing. Okay, so back to the radio. We can turn this OBS knob, which spins a compass around the outside of the nav radio, and you'll notice that needle starts to move. Now if we look very closely at the radio, when the needle is in the middle, this is lit up with from. That means we are at 345 degrees from the radio beacon, and it's moving. That's because we're very close to it, basically. So if we were to go to that radio beacon, do measure from there, and we were to say 345 degrees, we were somewhere along that line, about there when we did it. Does that make sense? So once we're out over the bay, we can do this a lot more slowly and carefully. We'll tune to one of the other VOR stations, so the one just across the water here. We've got the Woodburn one. So if we go and right click on this in little nav map, show us the information for VOR DME Woodburn. So the frequency for it is 115.6. So in our radio, bearing in mind we've already got this one tuned in, we'll go to 115.60 and we'll switch over to it, and this will retune with a little bit of luck. 115.6. Are we too far away from it? 115.60. That's interesting. Look, it's not seeing it, is it? Are we obscured from it? We're not very far. Oh, perhaps we are. We are kind of 30 miles away. Maybe it won't work that far away. Okay, so let's go and fly west on purpose. So let's go and fly directly west and see how close we get before the radio beacon starts working. While we're doing that, we will switch this over to 112.30. So that's the one we've just left behind. Okay, so west is going to take us this direction, which is fine. So let's have a look at 112.30, which was this one. If we turn the OBS knob and we go and tune it in until the needle is right in the middle, that means we are now at 10 degrees to the beacon. It's 16 now, obviously, because we're flying along at quite a clip along there, so it would have been 10 degrees when we did it, which was probably about there. Measure distance. Yeah. So the trick being here, if we spin this compass all the way around, you will notice it's now saying from on the indicator. So the omni bearing selector, that's what this knob is called, that's what OBS stands for, will now tell you it is 21 or 210 degrees from the beacon to us. So if we measure from the beacon to us, when we did it, we were there. Yeah? So it pays to do these measurements from radio beacons when you are some distance from them, obviously, because the closer you get, it's like when you're flying ILS. the closer you get to them, the more rapidly the needle starts to move, and the longer the delay in recording where you are is going to be more, you're going to lose accuracy. Okay, so let's go 20 degrees left. So if we go for 250 degrees instead of 270, and we're going to wait until we're out over the water. So we can actually measure our distance on Little Nav Map that we are away from this radio beacon. So if we go right click and measure distance, and we can just tell by looking on the line, 39 nautical miles away. So let's try switching again. Is it on yet? No, it isn't on yet. 115.60. I wonder what the range will be on it. That surprises me actually. Let's try it on the other radio, just out of interest. 115.60. Nope, no signs of life from the second nav radio either. Interesting. So what we're going to do, just to speed this demonstration along, is I'm going to hit the slew key and zoom us across the water significantly. And now I'm going to press slew again, and suddenly the radios come to life, both of them. So we are now only, if we right click and measure distance, we are 25 nautical miles away or thereabouts. So if I was to measure this or spin this round, 2 to 5 degrees to the beacon. So we check that on the map. Measure distance, 2 to 4 degrees. So it's thereabouts. So that's basically how these radios work. You can tune the compass until the needle is in the middle, and that tells you the exact direction to the beacon. But that's not the only thing you can do. Say you wanted to have you wanted to fly a particular course to the radio beacon. So if we do measure VOR and measure away from it, for example, so say we wanted a 30 or 40 degrees, a 40 degrees line from the beacon to us. Yeah. So we're going to spin our Omni bearing select around until it says from, and we're looking for 40 degrees on the compass. 30, 40. So we're almost there, look. Now, with it on 40 degrees, we can see we're to the right. That makes no sense. 115.6. 40 degrees from the beacon. That makes no sense at all. I would have expected that line to have been this side. So that seems to be a bit of a strangeness with Microsoft Flight Simulator, unless I'm doing something absolutely bizarrely wrong. Yeah, so we are very close to the line anyway, so it's being vague, isn't it? So we're on the line. So let's leave it like that. It just shows it's not an exact science using radio beacons, I guess. So if we go and turn to, say, 280 degrees, you'll see the needle move. Ah, of course, I'm being silly. We're using the from direction, which is obviously it's all reversed. So what I'll do, I'll measure from here, measure distance, and we'll go in at 215 degrees, just for argument's sake. Let me delete this. So it's a really good example of a mistake you can make. I was measuring from, which reverses everything on the radio and makes it more difficult to think about. So we want to go to the beacon. Did I say 215? So at the moment we are to the left of the line. And that makes sense. Look, there's the line, we're to the left of it. Yeah, in a moment we will cross over the line. It's 214 degrees here, but as long as it kind of adds up with what you've got here, that's about 214 actually. So you can see as we come over the line is moving in. So once it's in the center, it means we're on the line. Once this line goes to the left, it means we're to the right of the line. Obviously, when we were measuring the other way round, the line's position is reversed. It's much easier to think in terms of going to the radio station than away from it. This is just like flying ILS. Okay, so we've crossed over the line now, and it's going to the other side. In other words, it's to our left, based on the direction we are going. So if we were to turn the heading to make more sense of this to 250 degrees, we've still got this tuned to 215, so it's the same direction as our line, and it's saying we're getting further. If we watch it closely, the needle is going to get further and further away, which means we're getting further and further away from the line. Yeah. If we want to know how to go directly to the beacon, we can tune this across and say, okay, if we were to fly 210 degrees, which we'll do, so instead of flying whatever we're doing at the moment, we'll want to fly at 210 degrees, and that will take us directly to the beacon because the line is in the middle when we tune to 210. Yeah, and you can see there the path is going to lead directly into the beacon. Okay, let's go and have a look at ILS as well then. So I'm going to turn around and fly. What direction do we need to go? Let's go and have a look. Measure distance. We need to get onto the ILS. We need to fly about 75 degrees magnetic. Yeah. So let's go and spin the plane round to 75 degrees magnetic. So 75 degrees magnetic. So yeah, that example when we were doing a from bearing from a radio beacon was a really good example of how you have to remember if you're working on from, then the needle is reversed in terms of how it orients, you know, how you interpret where the needle is. If you're flying to, it's fairly straightforward. When you're flying to a beacon, if you're to the left of the line, it means you are to the left of the line on the map relative to the direction you are going. Okay, so we've turned around, we're flying 75 degrees now. So once the plane stabilizes out, I'm going to hit slew so you don't have 10 minutes of me prattling on during the video. And we're going to zoom back across the map through the wonders of the slew command. Maybe a bit more. Okay, so that's that done. So now we're going to tune back into this radio beacon here. So if we show information for it, it was 112.3, and I believe we had that tuned in earlier. So there it is. We just need to make it active. So 112.3, and this has woken up. Now we want to switch this to 2, so we need to spin the compass round. So that's telling us that the beacon is about 25 degrees away. So if I go measure distance, it's 18 degrees now, but it was 25 a few moments ago. Okay, so we're not actually going to use the beacon now though, we're going to tune into ILS 109.90. So we need to change the frequency 109.90 for the ILS. Switch it to active, and this suddenly switches on and we get a vertical bar as well. So we're going to change the OBS knob just for practical purposes to the direction the runway is. So you can see here it's 340 degrees magnetic, but it won't actually affect the compass. We're just doing it for reference purposes. When you're tuned into ILS, the compass rows around the nav radio doesn't do anything. Okay, so at the moment you can see we are to the left of the direction line into the runway. So if you imagine we project, well, you can see it written on this map here, we are to the left, so we're over here to the left of the line into the runway. I'm going to purposely let the plane fly over it. We're going to turn in slightly so we haven't got such a steep turn to make. So let's turn to 45 degrees. So you can see our plane turning. And while our plane is turning, you will see this line will start to move across the compass. At the moment, the line towards the runway is to our right. And it's to our right, yeah? In relation to the airport. Or the airfield, I should say. And you'll see the needle start to move as we cross over the line, and it goes to our left in relation to the airport. I'm going to turn a bit more, say to 20 degrees, so it's not such a drastic change when it happens. The reason the vertical line is, the horizontal line is coming down is because we're actually getting closer to the airfield. I'll explain that in a moment. So here we go, look. We're about to cross over the centre line of the runway. Yeah? So as we cross over it, the line will sweep over and it's to our left now. So that means we need to turn left. So we know the direction of the runway is 340 degrees. So we need to go further than that, to 330 degrees, for example, or 320, to re-intercept the line. And we know when we get to 340 degrees, we'll be back going in the same direction as the runway. Now we can see the runway now. Yeah, so you've got some direct correlation. So now I'm going to take the autopilot off. And we'll explain. So we can see the line is coming back in. It will be back in the middle when we are in line with the centre line. Now the horizontal line means if you imagine there's a projected dotted line through the sky that we should be approaching on, a 3 degree typically line that goes to the runway apron. We are above it. So in exactly the same way we are either to the left of or the right of the vertical line, the horizontal line works the same way. So we are above the line. So I'm going to cut the engine and dive. We'll turn slightly right as well, because we want to go 340 degrees, remember, to go straight towards the airfield. And we're diving and the horizontal line is climbing. So we're getting closer and closer to that imaginary line in the sky. You can watch this, look, and if I pull the nose up, we're now not descending fast enough onto it. So it's basically now about chasing that crosshair. So we need to go left a little bit. Right a little bit. I'm doing it I'm exaggerating on purpose so you can see it happen. So if I was to go this way too much, you will see the vertical line start to sweep to the left. And if I turn back, you'll start to see it come back towards the middle. Now the thing you have to keep in mind is the direction of the runway. Just because the line has gone to the left or the right doesn't mean you keep turning that way, because watch what will happen. I'm going to chase the line. Oh, I need to keep chasing it to get it back in the middle, and it's in the middle. Oh no, but it's gone the other side. So that's why you have to keep in mind the eventual direction you need to be going. Yeah, so you just go 10 degrees or so, or 20 degrees back towards the direction you want, and then back towards the runway, or the runway heading I should say. So you can see I'm very high compared to the ILS beam, so I'm just dropping down, and the horizontal line is lifting back up towards the centre of the nav radio. And we can just follow it in. To be honest, on a clear day, using nav radios on a clear day like this is ridiculous. You really don't need it. It's just an academic exercise, isn't it? But if the fog comes in and you can't see anything until you're 200 feet off the floor or even 100 feet off the floor, then ILS will save your bacon. So we're just gently following the beam down, and you will notice they're starting to move more rapidly, just as we were when we flew over the radio beacon earlier, and the frequency was changing very, very rapidly. I guess the message here is don't chase the ILS when you get close to the runway. Don't bother. You've got visual reference of the runway. Unless you're doing a Cat 3 landing in a big jet where they can actually land with zero visibility, it's nothing for you to really worry about. So we're just going to drift in gently, and we're down. Probably I was going to stop there, but anyway, I think that was a pretty good rundown of what you can do with the various radios. We'll come off here. Look, there's another exit, and we'll come up to a stop at the side of the runway, and I'll stop the video. So we'll wait on the holding point. Right, we'll come around onto the taxiway. Oh, look at these little houses alongside the airport. I wonder if that's chalets or something. Okay, I'm going to stop recording that.